podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. This is the Good Brothers. The Good Brothers. Good Brothers. Good Brothers? Trying something new. Get into the show. Peace. Peace.
Peace, my man. What's happening?
What's happening? It's the time of what time it is, and try and get into the month of October, and the coming I guess you can call it the closing quarter of 2020. You know what I mean? And in a pivot, or I don't know if it's not necessarily a pivot within the time of this conversation, but I think we had a conversation about like wellness or taking care of yourself. And I know you've been the last few months on a real flourish with your road work, with your running, and I thought maybe we should tap into that as I got different layers of some stuff I ongoing. I like calling my ongoing project to not be fat belly Rajee, you know what I'm saying, to be, more sleek Rajee, you know what I'm saying, more aerodynamic, you know what I mean, so to speak. And but also I know from experience, I get to October and living here, it became more pronounced, but folks, at least folks that know are familiar with the Pittsburgh blues, you know what I'm saying, because Pittsburgh is a particular town too, even there with the cloudiness and the way the season changes, where you can be like, man, it's just, whew. So I've tried to become more aware and perceptive as I'm heading to November, December, that I will get in a mood at some point in November and December as the season's changing. So I thought we could tap in about that today.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting thing because last time we was in the real mix of the pandemic, as we still are, evidenced by yesterday's news.
Yes.
But deeper in the throes of it, I would say, right? So I think at that time, we all were looking for things to throw ourselves into, right? Alcohol was big. Shopping was big, right? Like DJs was on Facebook, and you watched DJs play all day and all night, right? So like we had all these things that we were trying to get into, and then when we talked about it, it was really talking about like the running and wine, which just has been a thing that I've gotten into, which does actually connect to my wellness conversation in a second. But I want to give some context to this conversation around wellness in this specific way, and how the running started as physical, but then became much more, frankly. And it actually, we talked about our brother Ayad and his physical return, physically leaving the planet, but of course not mentally, because the mind never dies, and when you do the things that someone like him did, you never really leave, right? Your work stay. But as far as like around July of last year, was pretty stressed out and was wearing it. And one thing interesting about wearing stress and then the resulting weight from stress is that you may or may not see it, but other people do anyway. So even when you think you're not showing it or trying to wear a shirt a different way, right? you wear lack of health, right? And again, being bigger or smaller, I'm not making that an approximation of quality of health per se, right? In this context. But I'm saying individually, we know when we're not healthy.
Yeah.
And sometimes when it's connected to stress and all that kind of stuff, people can see it. And so anyway, so we had a family day in Philly, and he looked at me and he said, "Guy, you wearing more weight than you ever been wearing, right?" I said, "Yeah, I need to, work on it." So, and I was self-conscious of it, right? I was I'm vulnerable, and I can say that I was self-conscious of what he was saying, and I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Listen, just start doing cardio, right?" He was like, "You do a couple months of cardio, you're gonna burn that right off." Then he turned to somebody, one of the other brothers, and he said, "Listen, ever since I know Majestic, God been in shape, right?" Whoop-de-whoop. And that stuck with me. And that actually began the beginning of really starting to try to think about mentally taking running more seriously, even though I would say I didn't do what I needed to do totally until about 5 months later, right? When I just realized that, the stress that I had and have had to be something that you gave yourself a passageway out of. And this is before the pandemic, right? But I knew, right? And I think for Black men in particular, and I don't want to separate from Black women because I think there's some very unique things there. But for Black men, we don't have a lot of ways to work through our physical stress, and then also ways to work through our mental stress. And so then as part of our culture, we have actually created a space where not feeling good and not, it's almost been like, oh, okay, you eating, you doing good, right? But everybody that's quote unquote look like they eating in the, kind of street parlance, everybody look like they eating ain't eating, right?
Yeah.
They're not eating, and so it began a process, right? And it began a process of kind of being a man, and as a Black man, really taking accountability for like, what could I be disciplined to do to benefit myself? Because I think we've made, and I'll pass off in a second, but one of the things we've done in sometimes with brothers use like strength training, right? We'll be like, I'm about to go to the gym, workout, right? And you'll do a couple reps or something, you know what I mean? And then like, okay, I need my protein shake. Right? I need my protein shake with peanut butter and oats. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to bulk up, right? And then and be like, okay, and also I need protein. So if you're on a plant-based type time, all right, so I need to get this quinoa and this seitan. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I need these beans and rice because I need to, you know what I'm saying? I burned a lot of calories. Only to realize you didn't burn nearly as many calories in the gym as you thought you burned. Right? And so you find yourself getting bigger and not being aware of what happened, right? So just like, one thing, and I'll ask you about this as I kind of get deeper into it, is as you've actually been doing Ask Your Oldhead and those kind of things and allowing people to talk about things that Black men need to talk about with each other, how much have people talked about the level of physical wellness that then goes into those other forms of wellness?
It's a mixed bag. I would say, just doing a quick kind of mental inventory.
Yeah.
I would say most interviews, it doesn't really, physical taking care of yourself doesn't always come up. You know what I mean? Or brothers don't always mention it, right? I think folks sometimes will talk about things they do to relieve stress, music, whatever. A couple other pieces, but that kind of interface of fitness or exercise, or just however that manifests with health doesn't always come up. And I think I don't know if I don't know if I probably should start asking more explicitly, right? The other thing I think though is speaking for me, I want to just bring the I always look at fitness, and I think I've said this before, sort of like my ability to do certain things, not more so than like I said, a certain aesthetic piece. And I think but there is a opponent, of where it's like, yeah, man, your body image, how you see yourself, how you want to look, you know what I'm saying? Because I do see here more, especially like maybe off mic with folks, anecdotally with folks who talk about, yeah, man, I can't look like I looked when I'm in my 20s, or you know what I'm saying, or look this when I'm that way, or even the comments early on, even in this pandemic, when people were like, yeah, man, brothers can't get in the gym, you know what I'm saying, they ain't looking, if you're not feeling like you look good, or that you take that the way you need to be,
right?
And I think that it's I think it's sort of like men typically. I think we are conditioned to frame, if we're going to talk about how we look, if we're going to sort of either we've opted out sort of like, I'm not like an athlete fitness person, so I'm not really going to talk about it at all. Like I'm outside the spectrum of that. Or it's something that I just sort of talk about, like, oh man, look at those people over there being, looking this way. You know what I'm saying? And now on the other side, though, I will say is I do, run into those conversations, especially, some of my, older brothers, where they like, hey man, what's your A1C looking like? What's your cholesterol? Like, you know what I mean? Kind of reference it back to our brother. There's a little too much salt, you know what I'm saying? In that, you try to put on that sandwich, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that piece does come up, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially, a couple, and not like super much older than me, really, when you get into the big picture of it, but brothers of a certain age where they're having to be there, realizing for them to do what they need to do, they need to actually be much more concerned about, am I healthy? Am I actually healthy? Not do I look like I'm healthy? Do I appear, you know what I mean, to be in a good place, but like, am I actually, by anything that can be measured, like in a good spot? You know what I mean? And I think it's I would say, I'm a proponent of all the things that get men thinking about, like, if you're over 40, man, there's certain tests, in situations you need to be monitoring. If you ain't over 40, some of us may think, well, I'm in my 20s, I'm cool. But if you got a family history of, high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, you need to, you need to not wait till you over 40 to start being concerned with it. You know what I mean? Some of us don't make it there.
Well, it jump on us, right? That's the other thing. It jumps on us, and like, it's almost like you have all this time of not worrying about something, and then you go through this warp speed of having to think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing COVID has done has kind of isolated, kind of brought to bear the other comorbidities that people naturally we've acclimated to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that in our community, now then I want to go back kind of to the story, we've acclimated ourselves to the comorbidities and the challenges on a physical, mental, and emotional level.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he got sugar. She got sugar. You know what I mean? You got that, you got diabetes, or, you know what I'm saying? His knee hurt, right? Or this or that. You know what I mean? Like, can't eat my salt no more. Can't eat all that hot sauce, right? We've acclimated ourselves to this because the conditions and the structural conditions have created these individual and community outcomes, right? Where now it's norms to be like, what happened, right? Because when I start really thinking about, I can't think of the last person in my family who just kind of, quote unquote, died of old age. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, it just was time. Body just said stop, right?
Yeah.
Everybody that got sick or died because of something, right?
Yeah.
Like some actual thing. And so I think we've acclimated ourselves to these comorbidities. That is one dimension of what you're talking about. Then there's a second dimension of acclimating ourselves to the challenges emotionally and mentally. And I think that's what picked up in this process, right? Because So it's like, first thing is like, all right, well, I'm gonna start running and shit, right? So then it's like, all right, bet. Well, I gotta get all these clothes to look to run and shit, right? So I gotta look, because I ain't trying to go out. I gotta look like I'm a runner, right?
Yeah, you got, you gotta
look the part, right?
Yeah, you gotta look the part, man.
If somebody see you cutting a figure running in the wintertime, you got to make sure you got on a Nike jacket and with reflectors on the back and shit, right? Goofball. But like, so I got into that, and actually, funny enough, one time I was at the Nike store. Nike, come on, support us, Pedigree Run Crew. But I went to the Nike store, and I was like, okay, trying to get a running shoe. And the Nike Pegasus Shield, which is like they got a shoe that zips up so you can run in the rain and run in the winter.
Okay.
And so I bought it, and I was like, damn, it's an expensive shoe, right? But it was interesting because when it got to the wintertime, it was like what motivated me to get out there was this idea I had the shoe on. So I get out here, start trying to run, and I argue, we all think we're in slightly better shape than we actually are. Right? We all tend to slightly overestimate how good a shape we're in. And I got out there and was really working through it. But then one thing I started to realize, I started to get deeper into the actual like science of running, was all this other stuff you had to start thinking about. And it actually started leading me to a deeper look at mindfulness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because being present is like, I've been one thing that one of the coaches of one of the Kenyan brothers that's the best in the world, he says like the mind always runs out before the body does. And I've thought about that, and it is true. Your mind tells you to stop before your body physically needs to stop. Mm-hmm. And so I started learning these like different techniques and pieces of like, okay, because again, when your emotions and your breath are telling you you've been doing something for too long or longer than you've been doing it, right? It's just easy to say stop.
Yeah.
Versus, maybe you can go an extra 2 minutes, right? Because it's not, at this point, your body's already hurt. And you'll know once the runner's high is over, right? You'll know that you're hurt already. But at this point, it's your mind. That's the difference between the now and the next 2 minutes. And so that was a real process for me to start drawing that up. Now, when we go through the science of learning, our culture and everything, right? You learn this like intense discipline, right? You learn you might have to be up all night, or someone can ask you a question. You have to answer that question exactly how they asked you, exactly at any point they asked it to you, no matter what your conditions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as you get older, you're not interacting with people in that same way, right? So that level of discipline or mindfulness, which I look at in our alphabet is now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't hold that up in the same way because you don't have to. Where running made me do that, and it actually has led me deeper down a path of being much more thoughtful around the multiple forms of wellness that our worlds really get into. So it kind of led to a crux of last month. I challenged myself to run 100 miles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of like 100 miles, right? And so one, you start having to strategize to all the different ways you're going to get to 100 miles. Because it's like, okay, how many times I got to run to get to 100 miles?
Yeah, you got it.
It's approximately a little over 3 miles a day, right?
Right.
If you chose to do it like that, or it's 25 a week, right? So if you want 25 a week, then that's another way that you could look at, okay, how are you going to get this accomplished? But regardless, you have to actually have a strategy, right? And so it was a really interesting form of like getting through this month to do that. And while doing it, and then kind of getting to the end of the month where I went and ran out in Chicago. Shout out to the brothers at Last Lap Corner Store. What I'm saying? Shout out to 7 on Sundays, which is a crew of largely black men on the South Side, but also anybody can come. that run 7 miles on Sundays, right? So at 7 miles at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
That's dope.
It's also, remember, they run fast. They don't run slow. So I'm going to tell anybody, if you're going to run with the brothers and sisters from 7 on Sundays, as the proverbial Christian saying, bring your Sunday best. They will clap for you, but they will not wait for you. Let me just say that. But so as I started to get through the month was an entire process, because you got to like really plan, how am I going to get to this goal, right? It has to be extremely purposeful, because you can't play your way into it. Like, you have to do it, right? And so that means you have to think about what you ate. You have to think about these things, because if you've got to get up and run another 7 miles tomorrow, your body physically has to be in a place. So it really kind of has brought me to a broader sense of like thinking about the multiple forms of wellness. And actually, I just like to share this. One thing I'm working on for this month and the remainder of the year, but also one thing I've shared with others as is relevant, is like the different domains of wellness. And I think we tend to think of wellness as either physical, mental, and I think, now some would say emotional, right? But this is like talking about actually 8 different dimensions of wellness, right? So in the 8 different dimensions of wellness, you have emotional, which is like the ability to cope and create satisfying relationships. Environmental, right? That's like actually like your environment helping or harming you, right? It down outside, of course, in the air and the water, and but also in your house, right? In your physical space, is it actually helping you, or is it supporting your well-being? Intellectual. Where's your intellectual growth? Obviously physical. Thinking about like physical activity, diet, nutrition, and then the thing that I've been focusing on recently is rest. Because we have so many parts of our culture that talks about, I'll sleep when I die, right? Well, not sleeping will help you die. Right? Like,
yeah. It throws you in
it harms you. Yeah. Like, not resting well harms you. Right? And I'm 43 years old and really just realizing in a stark way, not resting well harms the body.
Yeah, I've been
even if you do a lot of other stuff right.
Yeah, and I've been in I don't know, I think the last 2 weeks in a bad sleep pattern I've been trying to get out of. And because I actually, one thing particularly around that, I want to get the other 4, but so I don't want to lose it. But midway, maybe by like after when this all first started, it's like people working from home and I was like, okay, I had I usually would get up while I use my phone as an alarm. And generally I try to get past 6 hours for sure, right? I do the best I can, right? To go like, all right, man, if I'm up at midnight, I can go get up at 6:30, 7, and I'll usually feel pretty good. If I can sleep to 8, that's better. And I got in a pretty good place though of not staying up super stupid late, and even pretty much not really using an alarm or nothing, just going to rest, and getting up, aided by some physical factors in the house until we got the blinds up, where the sun comes up early here in the spring, and my window faces to the southeast sort of, and it's just a lot of light around 5 a.m. certain times of the year, so to say the least. But then but even like right now, like one of the things I've been trying to dial back in is I got into this space where like suddenly I'm up till 3. Right. And that's not a pattern that's, and it's like, well, all right, then it gets to the point where it's like, maybe I just stay up all night and keep working on this and then I'll sleep tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like where I literally was,
right.
Yeah, I'm like, which I'm like, No, I need to go lay down at least. Let me go lay down for 4 hours at least.
That's right.
Because I'm gonna be a mess.
I sent you a text, and I, you know how you send somebody something, and you know they'll get it and open it up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I sent it to you. You responded. What the heck you responding for? I'm up early.
Because I'm tripping. That's why. I need to carry my ass to bed. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, so that even is something. So I want to come back to it. So what's the other 4 joints though?
Yeah. So occupational, right? And they define this one as personal satisfaction and enrichment derived from one's work. Now, different people have different perspectives on this. I am one of the people who feel like America has been totally sold a bag of bricks by consultants who told you have to love your job. You know, and I'm not of that thing, because I think that has everyone do stuff, just different stuff, right? Like my grandfather moved furniture. I don't know if he loved to move furniture, but he came really well at doing it, and did it well to take care of himself and his family. And then once he was done with that, he was done with it. But also, I think accompanying that is the fact that work has become omnipresent in our lives, where there was a time where people went to work and they stopped. Like, I show up here 8 o'clock. I'm done with you at 4 o'clock. I don't think about this again until 8 o'clock in the morning or when I get up. Right? Now, our phones, our email, all these things have become, right, omnipresent, which lends itself to saying, if you're going to have things in your life that are omnipresent, you probably should enjoy it. Right? So, yeah. So that occupational wellness is relevant. You know, they would define spiritual, expanding one's sense of purpose or meaning in life, you know, for who that's relevant to. But I do think it's even relevant whether you say you have a culture or way of life or a religion. Like, what is that to you? Or what is your relationship to the universe, right? So just broaden it out. You know what I mean? Social. And then also one that was interesting to me, but it's also very relevant, is financial. Like, are you financially well? You know what I mean? Just as you said, somebody could be physically looking good, but not really healthy. You could have money, but not necessarily financial wellness, right? And I think what we tend to talk about in our communities amongst Black men is maybe financial ability to take care of themselves. You may hear financial literacy, right? But not necessarily financial wellness. And that's, you know, diversifying your investments and your assets, and, you know, the relationship between your assets and liabilities. And so as I got into the wellness element of running, it then opened up to the broader wellness elements, right? So just like I meditate on thinking to get this run done, how do you meditate on how productive your day is going to be, right? Visualization. You know, they say Tom Brady and like Kobe Bryant would just spend time in the dark visualizing the success before they did it, right? We understand that as drawing something up before you go into it, predicting the history, right?
Right. You sit in it. You sit in it. You map out. You start to get a sense of what may be ahead of you, right? And it's not necessary. It's not definite, but you've already let your brain, let your mind move through some of the steps, you know, so that when you start, it, you know, maybe it won't be unfamiliar.
Right. You've run through it, so you're more prepared, right? And so, how do we do that for all forms of our life, right? Which then gets into, what are you spending your time thinking about, right? Because if I have to meditate on how I'm going to parent, but you've got to meditate on how you're going to try to be a partner. If you're going to meditate on how you show up for people who are important to you, right? You got to meditate on how you're going to spend your money. Then you don't have time to think about a lot of other shit. Yeah. Right? And so and it kind of makes you become self-interested in your wellness, right? You're self-interested in what you take in, right? Just as physically you're talking about it, mentally, what are you taking in? It's almost like this again, going with what's happening right now. Like, how many different times can you talk about somebody going to the hospital? Yes, there are certain elements that we should discuss, but that's not something we can talk about for 3 hours straight.
Yeah,
there's not 3 hours of that conversation.
Yeah, it definitely won't be healthy because you at some point you're gonna go into a fixation and rehashing and then going, oh well, and then the whole range of emotions of whether it's good or it's bad, and this is what they get, and then it's like if you ever been in a conversation with people and you feel like you may have like maybe like maybe it's in a work context, maybe it's in a community context, and especially something happens in the community with that person, and people are like, yeah man, oh you heard what happened so and so, like, oh man, wow, that's crazy. Whoa, for real? You know what I mean? And it's like, all right, now I'd like to move on to anything else besides us recanting what happened, and then like there's a break, and then somebody goes right back to the beginning of it. Like, can you believe they did that? I'm like, yo, man, we already talked about this. Like, I'm not trying to live my life thinking about that person all the time. I want to think about me. I want to think about you. Like, what's going on with you? Like, why are we centering on this person? You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's a aspect of life. I think, and even within the a couple of these, because like that can be a space where when you're trying to deal with how you're feeling about the world and life, it can become very seductive to like talk about others, and especially talk about someone who you feel is sort of a a national figure, or the as people say, the talk of the day. Like you can feel like you're it can make, basically, to me, I think about like a cognitive buffer to not think about you. You know what I mean? Because you're like, well, because I'm fine. I don't need to talk about me. But man, did you see? Can you believe these people? And it's like, yeah, I absolutely can believe it. I've been human for 44 years. I'm pretty sure. I think I got this down, right? Like I could totally think about. Like I don't need to talk about it again. Once I've established my understanding, like I can move on. Like I'm ready to move on to another topic, because there's only so much about that. And it's tough because I think that when we're dealing with really how we're feeling and how we're doing and our overall state of mind, these different things can become sort of the pool, where you can just swirl and keep swirling back and swirling back. You know what I mean? To move away from that which may be discomforting. You know what I mean? So you can go, and you're not really feeling your stress, and then dealing in anxiety about a global pandemic, and also maybe an apparent change, the ongoing social protests and what have you that's happening, where you feel your world is changing in a way you're not comfortable with. But instead of digging into that in some depth, you just go to the store and have an outburst, calling somebody out their name because you feel like you're fighting the challenge, right? Where in actuality you're sort of pushing yourself away. You know what I mean? To all the how they say, the Karens out there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Jumping in people's business. It's like, yo, man, why are you out here messing with people? If you are currently in a distressed state, it might be better for you to engage with a loved one or somebody that cares about you around, or a professional. You know what I mean? Like where you're at from a mental stress perspective, and why do you feel this particular outburst or treating these people, someone this way, is going to actually improve anything. And, coming back to the self, you can make a window, a bubble of sense, and not in the good bubble sense that we might be practicing right now with the pandemic,
right.
but a bad bubble where you're like, I'm not gonna treat things that do bring me some distress, or bring me that, even within those different spaces where I'm like, no, I'm not actually comfortable with how much money I make, or I'm not comfortable with my house or home or space that I inhabit. You know what I'm saying? I'm not currently maybe intellectually stimulated in the way that would really be refreshing and enriching. Whatever the combination thing, maybe I'm not, I'm not in tune. I'm not really right now. I'm not really rooted in my principles, right? In terms of that, relationship of self to the universe. And so then you start looking at the list of things that you're not actually happy with, and you might, like I said, we always have that. I think for me, sort of like the concept of the fight, flee, or freeze, applies in that space too, where you might go, well, then I'm like you go, you like I'm going, you might overindulge in substances, you know what I'm saying, so that becomes something that gives you something to focus on. You may keep coming back to the same conversation with the person that will take your calls, you know what I'm saying, and you know what I'm saying, where it's like, oh yeah, let's talk about that again. He's like, yeah, man, hey man, did you ever think about? I'm like, yeah, we talked about this 2 weeks ago.
And we don't need to talk about it anymore unless you want to talk about it, acknowledging the fact that this is a barrier, right? If this is a barrier and you need to talk through it, right? It's like talking about or talking through.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it? You want to talk through it? I'm with you. You want to talk about some other people? I don't want to talk about
it.
Yeah. Because like Dumas said, if you're talking about people, you're teaching for them. So be very careful the amount of time that you spend. So like for me, this was like what running in particular, and I think everybody uses different methodologies to get into this stuff, really opened up for me, right? It really opened up the different domains that I need to be aware of with my full with myself, right? And in the pandemic, you can kind of, it gives you two things. One, like you're saying, you can always find something else to jump into versus jumping into yourself. But it also can make you realize and be a little more conscious, like, damn, yeah, I can't really go as many places to run from stuff as much anymore. Right? Like work, and sometimes specifically, work will be like, oh, okay, I got to go to work thing, or people like Friday and Saturday night, I'm going to be outside. Well, guess what? Ain't nowhere to go now. Right? So if you spent Friday, Saturday, and some of Sunday out, one could argue, unless you were extremely disciplined, which some people are, how much time did you get to spend on yourself when you got off of work Friday, you're ready to go somewhere Friday night, Saturday night, and spend at least 3 to 4 hours of Sunday with other people thinking about other things? And that's before you got back to your family, right? And then try to talk with them about their lives, right? And so, for me, this wellness conversation and the domains of wellness, the physical one is a portal, if you will, right? It's a portal to really think about it. And then also, I'd be remiss to not talk about what I think is the interesting racial component of this work, right? Or this thinking about this stuff. So, you and I both have experience in history with tennis, which people, it's amazing how we still think that tennis is a white person sport when black people have been playing for over 100 years.
Yeah.
But you think that basketball is a black man's sport when you ain't been playing it that long. Yeah. But so, I had experience growing up with these ideas of a sport, and having a sport having racial, being racially affixed or racially like specific, right? And so it's interesting getting into running, because on one level, it's the most democratic thing in the world. Everybody's bodies move in front of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. You just go. Yeah. You
just go do it. Now, clearly in America, culture, Nike Run Club, like you're talking about, dry fit and carbon plates in shoes, right? Like all that stuff starts to make it much more specific. But one thing, as I got into this too, I started seeing the rise of what they call the urban running crews. And these are crews like across the country that are black and brown running crews who really kind of work to make sure and show that like running is not just for white people, frankly, right? Now we know in a lot of black neighborhoods, if you see a black man running, he might be a boxer, right?
Right.
So me growing up in Philly, if I saw somebody running, I didn't think that he was trying to be white. I thought he was trying to prep for a race. I mean, prep for a fight.
Right. He's training.
He's training, right? Because we know that cardio is a part of boxers' training, right? And if you want to be a good boxer, you can't get away from cardio.
Yeah, I mean, and then I think probably should add, especially for our age demographic, when we was youth, if you was doing any sport, running was considered the like, you need to go be running. If you playing football, basketball, like you gotta get some road work in. Like basketball, you could maybe get out of it, but even then, like maybe in your basketball practice, you end up, laps around the court or whatever. Like the general idea was that if anyone told you, if you said, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna go out for the football team in the fall," I mean, you better start running. Right. like they you need to start running. Like that was considered the at least my experience. I think
absolutely.
They got
absolutely right.
All kinds of other stuff like that people might tell you to, like they might say run, right? Even and also the science says, if you want to get good at running, then run. But if you're just trying to get your cardio up, there might be these other things you can do. Sport that mimic or look at the sport you're trying to get good at, right? So you might have a mix, but yeah. So
I think that's right and exact. So you see these crews that now just really focus on that, and you see that they're bigger and smaller, different cities. Like I said, I would say Chicago with 7 on Sundays, Gumbo Fit. They got a couple crews actually out there that ranging in age range that you can get into. Chicago's also extremely flat, which helps. But New York has We Run Uptown, Harlem Run. LA has Keep It 100. You know what I'm saying? So you just see them, and then Black Men Run, right, which is kind of like the broader health and wellness initiative. But then you got 504 in New Orleans. You know what I mean? So you really just got this emergence of this cruise. So when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered in Brunswick, Georgia, after running miles, it kind of really brought up some stuff in the running world of like thinking about a young black man being killed while running, or being killed in the, in the process of running and then stopping, and then that ended up being his death, right? So it's been like an interesting reckoning in the running world that running's had to come to, of like, don't be above the reality that a black person can get killed in all kinds of ways, including running. Which then speaks to the broader form of sometimes the isolation and the weirdness that it perceives when people see a black person running. Like, okay, where's he running? Where's he running from or running to, right? So it's almost like you then got to put on all this super running gear to make white folks feel like you're not a problem.
Yeah. But that's I think I always, even when I do, my walks and stuff, because it's like putting on stuff to make it clear, like I'm outside for fitness. Right. Like I'm not outside for, something else. You know what I mean? Just in case you was concerned. I'm trying to signal to people, especially, here when you get into the fall and the winter months, where it's dark. It could be dark by 4:30. You know what I'm saying? So, which ain't that late into the day, but once it's dark, and it feels dark, and everything feels different. Walking or running around, whatever you're doing. The other aspect I was thinking about is the way that like I said, the experience of like doing whatever so whether it's physical to start, but also sort of like right now, like I feel, and I might be wrong, but I feel like we're having like a financial moment in like Black America, like where I see a lot of like, with be an entrepreneur and get into the investing. And but with that, there's like an unhealthy veneer over it that's very deficit based. You know what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily about like, understand how you take care of your finances and then maybe look at what things folks have done well and done wrong. It's like, no, you don't know enough about money, and let me tell you these secrets, or you're just doing it wrong. And I find that I think that it can make, similar to the way things can become an impediment to engaging in those racialized aspects can become an impediment to engaging in running, or engaging in cycling, or some other type of fitness or physical training that may help you. Because with to me, I like to think about physical training getting you in sort of that mental physical state where like your mind and body have to be together for you to be successful at it. And so therefore it gets you sort of into that meditative space that one may get in, through like meditating exercises or breathing. And with sort of and there's definitely an overlay, especially for Black people, of sort of like how you feel about your money, your occupation, and your social status. Like those three, I think, have a nexus, where folks be like, because like, as an example, maybe not the best one, but I'm gonna go for it. I always think about like the cars people drive, and like some people have a very like, like I need to have a certain kind of car. Like I don't fit if you drive a car at all. Some of us don't drive necessarily. You know what I'm saying? But they be in cars with us. You know what I mean? hey,
him is me. Someone is me, y'all. Some of us is me.
Yeah, some of us is that guy. You know what I mean? But that's all right. He's the best co-pilot on earth. he's a navigator, man. You got it locked down. I don't know how he knows how to get everywhere, but don't drive. But
I got that shit all in my head too. Various cities of how to get places. Motherfuckers like, what are you talking? How the fuck did you think about how to get here?
I don't know how he knows. How you know how to get there? You ain't never drove the car. You know what I'm saying? But he's like, I got it. Yeah, turn left. You know what I'm saying? So you get the you get this sense where there could be the reality of experience like deficit, where like I don't have enough money to like take care of myself. Like that's a very real thing. And then there's also days where it's like, well, I may not have enough to take care of myself in the way I think I should be taking care of myself, or how I think it should look, or how I think it should feel, or where the location is, and the status and stuff that's related to that, and then how that affects I applaud and I support the idea and the dynamic, and it's a prevalent thing. They're like, we'll be like, yeah, man, brother's got to be, you should be taking care of the bills, and you should be paying on this, doing that. I don't like that conversation when one is not being like, if whatever you do, you have the number figure in your mind of how much you're bringing back, to do these things, to take care of your home and whatever. There comes a place where you can put yourself in a real unhealthy situation because you're trying to, like, you can't get where you're going the way you're doing it. Right. And so then to get there, you may compensate, or you take risks that are or you don't trust, so it's like, yeah, I do everything cash, brother. I do everything cash. And it's like, all right, that's cool. It might help you though to have access to a little bit of credit every once in a while to take care of something that need just, you might have to bite the bullet and take care of the thing you got to take care of. You know what I'm saying? And people like, and really see people like heart, blood pressure go up and all this other stuff because you're trying to fight it a certain way, because there's a sense of you are compromising your values if you have to make certain changes to adjust to be able to take care of yourself. The constant stress, is a thing is a phrase I've been thinking about for a while. Like, the idea of being, you ain't never been held hostage by a water bug. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Meaning your living conditions, you had some attendees and some guests where you're like, man, we all living here together, huh? You know what I'm saying? And you just got to figure it out, because it's not like you just can't leave, and you try to manage the circumstance, where these, individuals are trying to share space with you. And you're like, well, we got to figure out a way to get rid of them. But Also, I may not have I just don't, you just don't have the means to just evacuate the situation. So, like, how one can, I think it's just, especially this time of year, this is usually when, if people partake in the end of the year, buying people stuff, holidays.
movement, right?
You know what I'm saying? They engage in that, and the status. I think of it because, like I said, the Thanksgiving side is usually the social status credentials side. Like, I'm the family member who has the house where everyone can come to, or I'm the, what I mean, like, I'm the person.
Right.
We do the thing that if and then you get the, we gotta get the kids this, we gotta do that. We're gonna spend all this money. People get in a real dark place when they can't do it in the way that they think they think they need to be doing it. And I think an awareness of that is an important step to getting yourself in the right, mental, space, or in the place where you can, you can not take yourself into the void, so to speak.
Well, I mean, I think to your point about wellness, right? Nothing exists in a silo, right? Again, you and the universe are fundamentally related, right? And so we try to deal with certain forms of wellness and don't have the other forms of wellness, and then wonder why it gets unbalanced, right? So it's like, if you're trying to do something and be well in one space, but you totally neglect the other space, it's likely that your effectiveness in that other space will be impacted, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be like, okay, I'm trying to make sure I got the money to do this, or I'm about to invest in this. I mean, to say nothing of the challenge of, we talked about the whole susu / blessing loom, brouhaha, imbroglio, but like, people were looking for something more than what they had because they had access to money, right? What they called it was free money. You now know it wasn't free money. You should have saved that money, because they're not going to pass another stimulus package. So you ain't going to see another stimulus package until January. So whatever you got now, that's what you got.
Yeah.
But we saw it a certain way. So people wanted to make it more. So instead of thinking about the emotional and mental and intellectual wellness, to know that is not real, right? And then, like I've said before, my mother and grandmother went through it in the 80s, just under a different name.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people lost a lot of money, right? Because what they thought is financial wellness, because of not thinking about the historical and other contexts of being well, they fell victim, right? And so I think that's also part of the challenge. And again, going back to the beauty of Ask Your Oldhead, which is like, how do you work on these other forms of wellness so that when you get over to talking about finances, you can do it in a balanced way, right? So that you can do it in a way that makes sense for you and makes sense for you fundamentally. So that when you enter into being a parent, enter into being a partner, enter into taking care of your family, enter into other business relationships, that the rest of that makes sense for you to really be a partner in those things, right? Because sometimes we be trying to have people be partners in making money, and you ain't got no money, but then want to make us money. And then wonder why the interaction go bad, right? Just in the same way that, like, okay, you want to go into the gym and work out 4 times, and then don't recognize why it's not working for you, right? Are you going into it with realistic expectations? So I think us being able to use whatever methodology, right? And the other last thing I want to talk about that, and this is this, in the times of going to other cities and running, one thing you do see is this like huge explosion of running culture as well as cycling culture in the Black and brown community. That I think are really important, right? As people are trying to think about their health and wellness and utilizing, these like crews or clubs as a collective way to think about it. So just as, as your point, we need to do group this, group that. I submit the elements of black and brown folks thinking about group physical wellness is really important because we see how much of COVID had to do with this. We see how much in so many other places this idea of physical wellness becomes the bottom line. Because all of it don't mean nothing because you can't take it with you.
Mm-hmm.
All of the stuff we're talking about don't mean nothing if you help us. You know what I mean?
Well, something,
So,
something I think akin to that, and I think going to that environmental and like where you get the stage piece. Brother I interviewed at the top of August, Randall Why is a local musician, multi-talented cat, and also though he just started a nonprofit, and that one of the things they want to do is go help Black people fix up their cribs, especially Black people who just don't have the means to do it, right? And one aspect that I've watched is them going and helping actually people do cleanups. You know what I'm saying? So like the yard, the garage, the this that in the house. And I think about how often with the stress of our lives, and especially depending on your economic circumstances or other challenges, where you don't you need some help to get your even just your personal space in order.
right.
You know what I'm saying? And how often people don't, they don't, you got that neighbor that got mad shit in the yard and or multiple people, you know what I'm saying? It's, depending on, where you live, where you go, you can see where it's like, damn, what is all that stuff they got in there? Right? You know what I mean? And vice versa. And also being the living example of, I got all this shit in here. You know what I'm saying? And you don't know where you can dump it, where you can get rid of it, but you can feel the weight of it. There used to be, I think, maybe I could find that. Part of our consumer society is it does encourage you to collect stuff.
Right.
and then you can find and I would ask people, I would challenge people to go look through things you've stowed away, and how many of those things are things you may have bought as a part of the first step of like, I'm about to make this life change. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to do this new. I'm about I'm doing I'm doing boxing training. You know what I'm saying? So you ain't got mad. You got some jump ropes and some gloves, and and then whatever happened, life moves, and you push that back in the room. You got 3 different pull-up bars because you was like, I'm doing the bar stars. I'm getting in here with the training. You know what I mean? Or whatever the thing. But how often some of the things that we end up collecting and storing and not really being able to let go of that weight are often things that we got in an effort maybe to change things or to do something for ourselves, right? That got got disrupted by just the stress and the realities of trying to persist in other parts of our worlds. And and I think it's really important to physically and then mentally, in all modes, think about like what's the stuff, on the Erykah Badu bag lady tip, you know what I'm saying? What's the stuff you carrying around? You know what I'm saying? Like, like, man, you got some sneakers, you just won't, you don't wear them, but you won't get rid of them because them was your favorite sneakers when you went to that one dance, went to that one function or
Right.
whatever, what a night, you know what I'm saying? Or you got um one of the things I had a hard time letting go of, I mean, I always have a hard time letting go of books, but was like physical media that I hadn't listened to or watched in I don't know how long. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this has been in here, this has been in this box for 20 years. I don't think I'm maybe not 20, but damn near 20, closer to 20 than to 15. And you go, right. why am I holding on to this thing or trade something? Oh, I'm gonna work out with that, and you ain't never work out with it. It's like let go of that, man. Move on. Like you've already voted with your feet, so to speak, about where you're going. So embrace that. It's okay. Let go of the things that you're not really actually going to, because you can let that stuff sit around you and beat yourself up about it, right? Where you go like, you feel shame. Like, oh man, I said I was going to work on it. We work on that. And it's like, nah, man. The reality is you don't want to do that. So don't do it. Get rid of it and lean into what the things you do want to do.
Right. Dysfunctional reminders.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like because that's essentially what it ends up being, a dysfunctional reminder or reminder of your failure that is not helpful, right?
Yeah,
like it doesn't help you be born, so to speak. It doesn't help you grow, right? And so again, that environmental wellness is part of what starts to go inside your brain that fits into how you feel. Mm. Just like physically, when you go outside and do something, your body actually feels good, right? And so we have been taught and learned to use all these other methodologies to prop up feeling good versus the actual life changes that you can do. Like sometimes when I read different magazines, like from Europe, and you look at somebody's house and they got like 2 chairs, 1 table, and nothing else is in there, and everything is wood. And everybody like, what the hell is this kind of, Danish like motto is this? Well, over time, I've come to learn and appreciate the thing of like, if there's not a lot there, there's just not a lot there. Where I would argue in America, we've learned the contrary. The more stuff you have, the more accomplished you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
The more stuff you have immediate access to, the like better your living space is. And like you said, we all know the older you get, that ends up not being the case. Because it ends up being a lot of shit everywhere.
Yep. You got mad stuff. You know what I mean? And there's a place for, if your space, whatever the size and scale of it is, if it's filled with the artifacts of a joyful life and the things that bring you that sense of self and comfort, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Where like, like your crib you got the mad, if you got the mad mass, like drums and art pieces and, you know what I'm saying? And then you get to come in and see that, that's cool. Like, you don't got to do the minimalist thing. It's the question I would always ask to people. And it's the thing that, like I said, I had to deal with in real time with moving, is like, how much stuff are you holding on to because you don't know what to do with it, and you're in a sense you're embarrassed that you still got it. I mean, and then it's like, there's pretty good things. I mean, there's a good movie that's still relevant, like a little short called Story of Stuff, and this talks about our relationship with stuff and sense of self and its impact on the environment. And I think there's something to the same way when you put on an outfit, some clothes, for whether you have to do that for your professional, what you do for a living, or just for social status, social situations. You going out to you going to the show. There is a thing around like, yo, I'm in my me right now. I got my shoes I really like to wear, the pants that I feel real comfortable in, the shirt that I feel expresses my how I get down out here. People are gonna see me and give me positive feedback, and I'm gonna enjoy that feedback. Like, that's not that's an old human thing to like have a mind, a sense around your way you physically appear. And I think that those same principles or same feelings that can apply to other areas. And from do you have the ability to to make your living space look the way and function the way that you want, especially for those of us who are able to work from home, that you're now home all the damn time. Like, I'm here. Oh, like, I've had the last weekend where I was like, I was supposed to leave the house, and then I didn't leave. Then I realized I hadn't left the house for 3 days. I tease my son, Freedom, about, has he going out, because most of his life we didn't have a backyard, right? We just had, we had where the driveway was, or you could park a car or whatever. But so we had a house with a yard, and I tease him, like, hey man, you been outside to the backyard yet? For most of the time we lived there, he ain't been in the backyard, because going in the backyard it's not a map in his like activity, well, of like, what things do you do at home? Like, I'm in my room, I'm downstairs or in the kitchen where the food is. But I don't go outside in the backyard, because there's no backyard to go to. You know what I'm saying? Or there's not, maybe if I go out for these other things. So like, your past patterns, can also start to map like how you use other things, and especially when we're dealing with, at least I think about right now, like looking forward, Like, are you taking advantage of what you have around you to make the different textures, different times, different windows you need, so you can, if you need a place to read, if that's how you get into your intellectual, aspect, or maybe you need to engage with people, right? Maybe you need to find like a study journal, like, or some kind of a reading group or something, so that you can stimulate that part of yourself. You know what I'm saying, and make sure that that's growing or moving the way you can. Like, but there's like an interplay to me between where our what we have around us and how it's situated, and how it either supports or pushes us away, from certain engagements.
No, I think what you're saying is, and again, the broader vision of wellness, and again, whether you go into it physically or go into it mentally, right? Like, some people enter into it at different doors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the place has different doors, but it's a place, and it's a place of process, right? It's not a place of destination, right? It's a place of how do you work through what's important to you? How do you work through feeling better, right? How do you work through being better? And then also, how do you work through being a better person for the world? I really, especially in this time of like social media, people project all their fears and angers to other people all the time. So we're always receiving other people's energy and other people's ideas, right? And so when you're always receiving energy and ideas from other people, especially folks who have been cooped up in the house dealing with financial challenges, personal challenges, physical challenges, we living through a pandemic, as well as all the other stuff that just impacted folks in a harmful manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could be receiving the energy. So you got to, as I said, you got to guard your motherfucking energy, man. And I think the wellness conversation is a way, especially for Black folks who have consistently been under fire, if you will, and flourished under fire, but under fire, to think about what are our protective measures of managing ourselves and then managing our relationship to the world. Because my thing is, I can't let you make me tired. So if I need to think about physically, mentally, emotionally, what I have to do to appear and show up with the energy and passion and drive to live a full life, I owe that to myself and to my community, and I owe it to the planet. I don't owe the world talking incessantly about my exhaustion. Now, I talk about running and stuff on social media to a certain degree, but I don't talk about everything, every time I went somewhere and ran with somebody, or every milestone I hit, because I don't think they need to hear that shit all the time either. However,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? However, people just don't want to hear all that negativity, dog. Like, it's just no other way to say it. And so it's like, I think to, just as we come to, close, like, just really being thoughtful around how to show up for other people and how to model and live out that behavior, which is like, man, to try to be at your best and not in no kind of like Instagram, dude running in the rain way, or even, wallow way. But like, what does it mean for you to smile? What does it mean for you to be where you need to be in this time? So that's what I got, Just.
Word up, man. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I think so I mean, just maybe to close out, I guess I'll share like the thing I'm tuning in, like I said, is trying to get some regiment in my at least from a physical side of things, but between my capoeira, and I've always had to like do other ancillary, either lifting or other stuff, because there's a certain kind of fatigue that I personally respond to, that I can't always in capoeira or in martial arts. But any maybe close out any like particular goal for October, in any of those domains that you think, you want to, put on the record.
No. So I'm, after hitting the beam, my goal is to be between 80 and 85 a month. But as well as introducing yoga and more mobility training into my running. There's a difference when you run and your body feels more mobile. That doesn't mean the Richard Simmons stretching model, but it means how's your body responding. So that is my goal, physically, but also that one of my goals for this month is to look at the domains. I've chosen 5 of the 8 and actually track my process over the month.
Oh.
To track it by day, to track it over the month.
All right.
So that's what I.
I like that. So for me, I've been basically like, so Bananetta is basically is a handstand in capoeira, or what would look like a handstand. And mine, like, I can do one, but without in terms of just going into a handstand and stopping without like a wall or something to use my foot to like know when to stop.
Yeah,
I'm not there yet, and I need to be there. Like, I can't do the extra cool capoeira stuff till I can get a little bit more body control, getting in and out of my bananetta. So personally, like, locking in to work on that from a physical perspective. On the other areas, some of the other things, like, I mean, I usually do, with part of I want to add to the podcast, a little bit more solo pieces. Some of that, though, requires me to do a little more thinking and writing than I'm been consistently doing the last couple of months. So looking at, ramping up my writing. And then this, this is last quarter years is point of transition. So I gotta get my space in here, kind of coordinate it, where been working at in the house. And we have, a room is the office, but I'm working on this is the stuff that I had available to make a workspace mode, and I gotta get this in order in a way that is, I mean, even physically, that I have a chair that's like 5-6 years old. It's probably not, I can't sit in it for super long without feeling like my back is starting to hurt. I'm not a person that has back stuff. You know what I mean? Or when I look at a room and I don't want to go in there. Right. So those are my couple things I'm trying to get, coordinated and situated so that I can, be in a healthy mind state, close out the, what's left for 2020. You know what I'm saying?
So also one thing I'll leave for folks who, interested is there's a guy on Instagram. His name is Joe Holder, and his Instagram address or name or whatever, it's called Ocho System, and he's a Nike master trainer. But one thing he also does is bring the environment. He also brings in mindfulness and different tools and shares a lot of that information, which was a really good kind of entree for me to get into some of the physical stuff, but then also broader to get in some of the mental stuff that I needed to do. So,
all right. Well, with that, I think we're good to go. So,
man,
appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, God. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you for my brother, Majestic, for joining me once again as we get into the fall season. Seasonal affective disorder is a real deal. It's a real thing. So rather than wait until you're in the midst of it sometime around Thanksgiving and 2 weeks before Christmas, man, bear witness that you might need to do some prior planning to keep your mind and body in the place you needed to be, especially in this tumultuous season that we're going through as a country, as a society, as a planet. Thank you to you, the listeners. Please listen, subscribe, share, all those good things. You can support the podcast by becoming a patron. Just look up Justice Rajee on Patreon or Ask Your Oldhead on Patreon. Anything you want to sign up for at any level helps me keep the lights on, as it were. Good Brothers is a production of the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast family, network of podcasts to come, podcasts that are. I appreciate you, and in all things, be safe. Get your mile in, make sure the rent's paid. With that, I say, peace.